بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له واشهد ان لا اله الا الله وحده لا شريك له واشهد ان محمدا عبده ورسوله صلوات الله وسلامه وبركاته عليه اما بعد فان خير الكلام كلام الله جل جلاله واحسن هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. As we continue in this tremendous explanation by the great Imam Abu al-Abbas Taqiyuddin Ahmad ibn Abdul Halim ibn Abdul Salam ibn Taymiyyah al-Harrani al-Dimashqi al-Numayli, the one who died 728 after the migration of our Prophet ﷺ. At the time now, it's 7:06 p.m., Wednesday, August the 31st, 2022, which agrees with the Islamic calendar, Tariq al-Hijri, which is the 2nd of Safar, on this evening of Wednesday. On this evening of Wednesday, the year 1444, after the migration of our Prophet ﷺ. As we continue in this tremendous explanation, we were speaking about what the great Imam Abdul Aziz ibn Abdullah ibn Abi Salama ibn al-Majishun min Ashab al-Imam Malik rahimahullah. And that profound statement that he brought, that you'll find the Shaykh al-Islam, that he mentioned his statement. And it had a lot of details. You'll find that his statement, we will continue to elaborate and explain the statement of the great Imam Ibn al-Majishun, rahimahullah. You'll find that we were speaking about where the great Imam, he mentions, or Shaykh al-Islam mentioned the statement of Ibn al-Majishun. He says, فَقَالَ لَا يَرَاهُ أَحَدٌ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. He's speaking about how the greatest of all blessings is the believer seeing Allah in the hereafter, on the day of resurrection, and likewise in paradise, from above them. That's what we stopped at last class. You'll find that the deviant sects from the Muslims who deviated from the Mu'tazila, who denied the greatest of all bliss that the human beings will experience if Allah allows us to enter paradise, which is to look at Allah's face. So they rejected that bounty, rejected that the greatest of all blessings, or the greatest of all bliss and pleasure in paradise, based upon the fact that they accepted aqliyat. They accepted affairs that only agree with the intellect or rationality. They rationalize, and as a result, they demoralize themselves. And they came with these deplorable matters, and that's the reason why we mention it, that the denial of Allah being seen in the hereafter is, like we said, is from what Ibn al-Majishun was mentioning of those who rejected that affair. From them was the Mu'tazila, and we also mentioned the affairs of who? The Shaykh said, the affair of Allah being seen on the day of resurrection will happen, however, biduni muqabala, as they said, without Allah being in front or directly in the direction, as they said. Which is the reason why they fell into this atrocity or this major mistake, because they flee away from affirming that Allah is above. As a result, they came with this type of contradiction. So how can Allah be seen but will not be in a specific direction, or will not be in front of the believers, will not be in front of them or above them? So that's absolute tanaqud, that's contradiction. How can something be seen and will not be in front or done with in front or directly in the direction as they so-called say, which is absolute nonsense. And like we said, it brings more confusion in the mind of a Muslim when they hear these type of contradictory affairs, which leads to doubt, as we mentioned. Like we said, we're teaching the people these matters based upon the fact that the Muslim is supposed to learn aqidah, belief, because it brings yaqeen, not doubt. It brings surety and stability in the religion. Based upon what these people believe, it brings the opposite, has the opposite effect. Rather, it brings doubt and confusion. But that's what we mentioned briefly from last class. We also mentioned the definition of the meaning of the word awliya or wali. We mentioned that. We said that the awliya of Allah, we mentioned this in the classes that we teach, which is called al-furqan, bayna awliya al-Rahman wa awliya al-Shaytan, which is another tremendous beneficial book by the great Imam Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, where the ta'rif of Ahl Sunnah, the ta'rif Ahl Sunnah of the word wali, as we know, comes in Surah Yunus, as we already mentioned. We said, أَلَا إِنَّ أَوْلِيَاءَ اللَّهِ لَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَكَانُوا يَتَّقُونَ. Verily the awliya of Allah, there is no fear upon them, nor any sadness. And then Allah gives the definition himself, subhanahu, where he says, those who fear him, those who have iman, الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, those who have iman, and those who have taqwa. That's the meaning of wali. We talked about the deviant or perverted meaning of wali with the people of tasawwuf, from the deviant sect called the Sufiyyah, where the Muslims need to be on guard against this evil sect. But we know Sufiyyah is from the greatest of atrocities that the Muslims have adopted within their ranks. You'll find all types of kufr that will lead one out of the fold of Islam based upon their perverted beliefs and concepts they have adopted, and as a result of it, a lot of people fell into many strange, weird things, such as their meaning of awliya or wali is that it's what? That it's inherited. We mentioned last class that walaya is not what? Walaya, or being close to Allah, is not inherited. Rather, it's what? It's acquired. One has the choice to be a wali of Allah. If iman is shown to them, they either choose to believe or they choose to what? Disbelieve. And once one embraces and enters in the fold of Islam, then they become a wali of Allah ta'ala, and their walaya, their closeness, can become strong based upon their increase in knowledge and their application of what they learn. They become stronger, and we know that hadith, as we mentioned in Furqan, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ما يتقرب إلي عبدي بشيء أحب إلي مما افترضته عليه ولا يزال عبدي يتقرب إلي بالنوافل حتى أحبه. To the end of the hadith that we already mentioned in those other classes. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that he mentions that those who strengthen their walaya like this, their closeness of Allah, this is how they come closer and closer. He says that my slave will never do what is more beloved to me, meaning he strengthened his walaya and closeness with me more than what he does of performing what? Carrying out those obligations that I made binding upon him. And that my slave will continue to draw close to me by those superioratory or those voluntary acts until I love him. So those affairs are to let one know that the asl, that every mu'min, when they enter the fold of Islam and they attain knowledge and they continue upon that path until they increase in their application of what they know, until they will draw close to Allah by those what? Obligations, by fulfillment of it. And then they will increase in that faith and that strength so much that they will want to do more until they will do what? Voluntary acts. So that's to let one know that their walaya is becoming stronger. So this is the affair of what we talked about, the meaning of wali in the ta'rif or the definition of Ahl Sunnah. However, you'll find that the meaning of walaya with the people of tasawwuf, their idea is based upon what the great Imam Muhammad al-Jamili mentions. He says, al-awliya عند أهل التصوف فئة معينة الولاية عندهم بالوراثة الولد يرث الولاية أو الولاية الولد يرث الولاية من آبائه وأجداده ولو كان من أفسق الفساق. He said with the people of Sufiya, Tasawwuf, that their meaning of wali is a specific group, and that al-walaya, closeness with Allah, with them, is inherited, as we mentioned, right? Bil wiratha, it's inherited. Is that right, everyone? We said closeness with Allah is not inherited. Is it for a specific group only? No. Is it inherited? No. Any human being could be a wali of Allah if they choose embrace iman and work righteous actions. Is that only for the black man, or for the white man, or for the Arab or the non-Arab? It's only specifically for one of those groups? No. Walaya could be for any human being if they choose what is correct from embracing iman and working righteous actions and being righteous people. Anyway, so based upon the definition of what the soul for the people of Sufiya that they mentioned is saying, that al-walad yarithu al-walaya, based upon their warped, perverted meaning of it, is that walaya is from their fathers or their grandfathers, even if he was the most wicked of people. As long as he's ascribed to a house or a certain tribe or a house or family, وَعُرِفَ فِيمَا قَبْرَهُ بِأَنَّهُمْ بَيْتُ الْوَلَايَةِ, and it was known in their history from before that they were families or a house of walaya, like you'll find from them who are called Bayt ibn Alwan, which is a so-called family that inherited walaya, even if he was a kafir, even if he was a non-Muslim. هَؤُلَاء مِنَ الْأَوْلِيَا, these people are from the awliya. So it's not looked to the person. However, as we talked about, in Islam, the correct definition of the word walaya, closeness with Allah, is not inherited. As we mentioned, instead it's what everyone acquired. Muktasaba, it's acquired. Al-walaya, as we mentioned, is iman, al-taqwa, wa-salah. Faith, the correct faith, piety, and righteousness. Wal-iman amr muktasab. Faith, as we know, is acquired. It's by choice, by a human being. They either choose to believe or they what? Choose not to. If they choose not to believe, then they will not be from the awliya of Allah. But if they choose to believe and they increase the knowledge and that closeness with Allah or fulfillment of those obligations, then they become stronger in their closeness or their nearness to Allah ta'ala. As for nubuwa or risala, as for prophethood or messengership, for lack of better words, or being a messenger, that's by ijtiba wal istifa wal ikhtiyar. That's by who Allah chooses. Is it clear, everyone? Nubuwa is by ikhtiyar wal istifa. Walaya is by what, everyone? It's acquired. Prophethood is what, everyone? Chosen by Allah. Al-Risala wa Nubuwa is chosen by Allah ta'ala. As far as walaya, anyone can be a wali of Allah. Whether they be black, white, Arab, non-Arab, all of humanity. If they choose what is correct, which is embracing iman and amalun salih, and righteous actions we mentioned. However, you'll find that these people from Ahl Tasawwuf, it says, قَدْ يَكُونُ الْأَصْلُ الْأَبْ كَافِرًا. He said, you'll find based upon their definition that if it's inherited, he said the origin of the family, he could be what? A disbeliever. Or he might be a very wicked individual. Or he might be a polytheist or an idol worshiper. So, فَيَخْرُجْ مِنْ صُلْبِهِ إِنسَانٍ كَتَبَ اللَّهُ لَهُ الْوَلَايَةِ. However, in regards to us, can be the same affair. A person, origin might be a disbeliever or from a family that are not upon Islam. But however, Allah Ta'ala can take out from their family who He has written for them proper guidance. Proper guidance, and as a result, they will be from the awliya of Allah, who Allah Ta'ala has written in what was preordained for that individual to be rightly guided. For example, everyone knows that the Sahaba were the greatest, rather than the greatest of all the awliya of Allah, but the companions of Allah Ta'ala. Despite of a lot of their fathers dying in the state of kufr, in the state of jahiliyyah, And despite of that, what happened with them? They became from the greatest of creation after the prophets and messengers. But some of their fathers died in the state of kufr before Islam. And look what Allah had decreed for them to be the best of creation and the greatest of awliya of Allah, despite of their fathers dying in the state of kufr, or despite of their fathers or their grandfathers dying in a state that is very humiliating before Islam or during the days of Jahiliyyah. But despite of that, walaya, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made them from the greatest of them, despite of them coming from this type of background. You'll find that a lot of people base this affair of walaya or closeness or proper guidance based upon what their ancestors were upon, or their grandfathers, or their great-grandfathers, which is not the case in our religion. And the greatest of all examples, as we mentioned everyone, is based upon the affair of what happened with the companions. A lot of their fathers and their great-grandfathers died in the state of disbelief, and they were not from the awliya of Allah, despite of them, meaning the Sahaba, being from the greatest of them. So it's not a condition to let one know that being a wali has to be what? Conditional. Conditional with what? That it has to be inherited. That's not the case. Even though it can happen. But is it a prerequisite? We say, well, no. Certain people can have a beautiful, great lineage, where generations of generations are upon what's correct. That's in certain cases, that's excellent. But is that a prerequisite? We say no. Walaya, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can guide who He wills, even though they come from the most wretched of backgrounds. Is it clear, everyone? I'll say it again. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can guide who He wills, despite of who comes from the most wretched of backgrounds or wretched of families. Is it clear, everyone? Is it clear or is it not clear? Oh, the people come. No, I'm not talking about you. Fine. So we mentioned to say a lot of our youth, we want to correct their mafhum, their understanding of this word walaya. Because you'll find that some of the Muslims تربوا في أحضان وفي تربية المتصوفة ومفهوم المتصوفة في كثير من الأمور بل كثير من المفاهيم الإسلامية تغير مفهوم الولاية ومفهوم التوسل ومفهوم الاستغاثة. He said that a lot of the Muslims, their understanding or their proper understanding of the word walaya had changed due to the fact that a lot of them had grown up with an improper rearing. And they were cultivated amongst some of those who were upon deviation in Islam. And they were upon Sufiya, or they were upon some other type of perverted understanding of Islam. So the meaning of the word mutasawwifa had changed, and a lot of those affairs with the Muslims had went astray in, where we have to now correct it. So this affair from those matters have become changed, as the matters we just said and clarified, which is called al-walaya. That changed. We just rectified it and explained it. Also has to be rectified is the word at-tawassul, seeking as a method to draw close to Allah. You'll find that some of them say that the meaning of taking a method is to make dua to the dead, which is incorrect. It's not the meaning of tawassul. Or you'll find the meaning of istighatha, meaning to seek relief by making a supplication to the dead in order to attain relief from some difficulties that one is facing. That also became changed in Islam, where the word istighatha became to seek relief from the dead likewise, which is also what? Incorrect in the distorted meaning and version of the word istighatha, where it's not legislated, rather it's a form of, as we mentioned, major polytheism that can remove one from the fold of Islam. If they died in that state, they can be in hell forever. So all these different types of mafahim, these understandings that have become changed and distorted, have to be what? Rectified in the minds of the Muslims and in their belief. As we said, the word walaya, I ask again, is it inherited? We say what? No. Is it acquired? We say what? Yes. Is it something that is a prerequisite that has to be from a beautiful lineage? No. What is the affair? What is correct? Or if we want to say, what is the dalil, the evidence for what we're saying, what substantiate for what we're saying, is what, everyone? That the Sahaba were the greatest of the awliya of Allah. And despite of that, some of their fathers and great-grandfathers and their ancestors died upon what? Disbelief. And despite of that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had written for them guidance where they became from the greatest of creation after the prophets and messengers. So that's to let one know that it's not stipulation that you have to come from a proper background in order to attain walaya with Allah to do with the other. Is it clear, everyone? Everyone with me? J. And like we said, alhamdulillah, we explained this word al-walaya in so many of our classes. From them is the other profound, great book by Shaykh al-Islam called Al-Furqan. The criteria that distinguishes between those who are close to Allah and those who are close to the devil. We give the meaning of the word walaya in detail in that particular book. Tayyib. So listen to what Ibn al-Majishun that he goes on to say. He said, either, so we just rectified and clarified the meaning of walaya, right everyone? So the walaya of Ahl Sunnah is not like the walaya with the people of Sufiya. Two different things, two different valleys, or two different, as they say, understandings. Rather, their understanding is warped and incorrect. And the awliya, who are truly the awliya of Allah, are those who are upon correct faith, correct belief, righteous actions, piety, and righteousness. Rather, you'll find that the awliya of Allah is the Imam al-Shafi'i, that he mentioned in this tremendous poetry. He used to say, إِذَا رَأَيْتَ الرَّجُلِ يَطِيرُ فَوْقَ مَاءِ الْبَحْرِ يَطِيرُ إِذَا رَأَيْتَ الرَّجُلِ يَسِيرُ فَوْقَ مَاءِ الْبَحْرِ يَطِيرُ, because it's switch it, he says in the beginning, وإذا رأيت الرجل يطير فوق ماء البحر يسير ولم يقف عند حدود الشرع فاعلم أنه مستدرج بدعي. The Imam al-Shafi'i, that they ascribed this poetry to him, he said, if you see a man floating above water, إذا رأيت الرجل يطير, rather he says in the beginning, if you see someone flying in the air, and you see him walking above water, and he did not stop at the boundaries of the Kitab and Sunnah, where his Iman is correct and his Aqeedah is correct, know for sure he's a person that's being set up from Allah and he's upon bid'ah. So a person should not be fooled by some of the things that you'll find. Like for example, you'll go to some Muslim countries, you'll find that certain people, that you'll find stories from the Sufis, that they say that they see certain individuals flying above water. Or you see, for example, them sticking things in their mouths and it's coming out on the other side, and then when they pull it out, it's as if nothing ever happened to their skin. Did these people stop at the boundaries of Allah? Rather, they exceeded them. And they were upon something incorrect, which was something, rather, it's from the signs that they're from the awliya of the devil. Is it clear, everyone? Fine, so let's keep going. So the Imam Ibn al-Majishun, he goes on to say, he said, وَقَدْ قَضَى أَنَّهُمْ لَا يَمُوتُونَ. He said, meaning that the believers, the people who will see Allah on the day of resurrection, and we know in Jannah, likewise, they will see Allah, the awliya of Allah, who are the people of Tawheed, the people of Iman. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He removes the hijab, of course, then their faces likewise will be what? Will be blooming with that beautiful radiance of light, with that nadara, the beautiful radiance of light. Right? So Ibn al-Majishun goes on to say, Awliya Allah alladhina dakhalu Jannah, those who enter paradise by the bounty of Allah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will declare for them that they will never die. And they will look at Allah on the day of resurrection and in paradise, when Allah removes the hijab of light. Because we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is what? His veil is light. And the message of Allah we'll talk about in the hadith in the next chapter, is about to come right now, that when the message of Allah said in the hadith to Aisha, when she was asked, Nurun anna ara, hijabuhu nur. We said to Aisha, our mother, he said, light, how can I see Allah? His veil is light. Which is to let one know in this narration, which was negated, was ru'yatul basariyah, the negation of Allah, of the message of Allah, seeing Allah with his vision. He's seeing Allah with his vision. But the message of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam did see Allah with his heart, but it was still from behind the hijab. It was behind the veil. At any rate, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will remove the hijab, and in paradise, Allah still will be above the believers. He will still be above them, and He will salam them, saying a statement, and they will hear His voice by saying, Salamu qawlan min Rabbir Rahim. Salam's a statement, which is to let you know it's speech, from a merciful Lord. Tayyib. So that's what Ibn al-Majishun that he mentions. It says that we know that on the day of resurrection, that the believers will see Allah twice. As far as the hypocrites and as far as the kuffar, then that's something different. You'll find it's khilaf in that regard. But what is most important is that the believers, by agreement, will see Allah. Believers will see Him, and like we said, on the day of resurrection and in paradise. So those affairs are agreed upon. As far as with the hypocrites, that's something different. There's a little bit of khilaf in that. But like we said, those affairs are not really anything to say that there's difference in our aqidah, because the most important thing is to know that the believers will see Him. Is it clear, everyone? Jake. So let's keep going. إلى أن قال وإنما جحد رؤية الله يوم القيامة إقامة للحجة الضالة المضللة إقامة للحجة الضالة المضلة لأنه قد عرف إذا تجلى لهم يوم القيامة رأوا منه ما كانوا به قبل ذلك مؤمنين وكان له جاحدا وقال المسلمون يا رسول الله هل نرى ربنا فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم هل تضارون في رؤية الشمس ليس دونها سحاب قالوا لا قال فهل تضارون في رؤية القمر ليلة البدر ليس دونها سحاب قالوا لا قال فإنكم ترون ربكم كذلك. So this is a continuation of the great Imam Ibn al-Majishun. He said, وَإِلَىٰ أَنْ قَالَ For verily they denied the ru'ya of Allah. Who's those who deny the ru'ya of Allah? The Mu'tazila, of course the Jahmiyyah, the Mu'tazila. The Asha'ira say their usual games, or they play their usual games that they say. They'll affirm something, and then they'll come with something weird that will what? Basically contradict what they initially said. So anyway, he said they deny or reject that Allah will be seen on the day of resurrection, establishing a so-called misguided proof, or misguided and misguiding others type of proof that they use. And it has been established indeed لَإِنَّهُ قَدْ عَرَفْ that when Allah manifests to the believers on the day of resurrection, they will see from Him what they used to believe before they what? Seen Allah. So everything that they believed before actually what? Actualized, those matters that they had believed and studied and firmly believed in, all will become clear on the day of resurrection. It says, وَرَأَوْ مِنْهُ مَا كَانُوا بِهِ قَبْلَ ذَلِكَ مُؤْمِنِينَ وَكَانَ لَهُ جَاحِدًا. He said, in regards to those people who did disbelieve, of course, meaning division or without Allah will be seen. He said, their affair will be different, whereas they denied it. And similar to that, what happened to them is in contrast to what they used to deny, meaning that they would be deprived of seeing Allah, based upon the fact that they rejected that Allah will be seen on the day of resurrection and in the hereafter with iyad billah. He said, the Muslims say, "O Messenger of Allah, will we see our Lord?" And we know the hadith where it says, "Do you have any harm in seeing the sun where there's no clouds in the sky blocking its vision or hindering its vision?" They said no. We know that also there's a narration that it says in regards to the crowdedness, because we know on the day of resurrection there will be a lot of people, that even the crowdedness of the people will not what? Harm you from seeing Allah likewise. There's another meaning, and it's that one. And another meaning of the hadith is hal tudammun, that will we have to gather together in order to see Allah? That will also be negated. So 3 things will be negated. No one will be harmed, the crowdedness will not hinder you, and you will not have to gather to a certain space in order to see Allah. You will not have to gather here or gather there or gather to a certain type of ground just to see Allah on the day of resurrection. So the message of Allah based upon all these meanings is to put emphasis on the clarity of how the affair will take place. How Allah will be seen to the believers, and a matter of how do you face any of these difficulties or hindrances when you look at the sun on a bright day? No, you don't. You don't have to go outside and have to stand on a certain hill on a bright sunny day where there's no clouds, where the radiance of the light is penetrating, where you have to gather a certain place, rather as clear as as they say, is the sun in the sky. So you'll find that we mentioned this. Let's go back to the beginning. So this is the speech of the great Imam Ibn al-Majishun, where Shaykh al-Islam is continuing to narrate upon this great Imam from the ulama, the scholars of Al-Madinah. And he was from the Quran, from those who are from the colleagues or from people who lived at the same time of the great Imam Malik ibn Anas al-Usbuhi, rahimahullah. Rather, he was from the scholars that used to teach in the Prophet's Masjid along with Imam Malik. Anyway, you'll find that he says, Ibn al-Majishun, he says, وَإِنَّمَا جَحَدَ رُؤْيَةَ اللَّهِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ إِقَامَةً لِلْحُجَّةِ الضَّالَّةِ الْمُضِلَّةِ. Rather, they reject Allah will be seen on the day of resurrection, establishing a misguided and leading others misled by the so-called proof that they use. Who is the people he's speaking about, everyone again? He's talking about who? The Mu'tazila. Then, at the same time, what's implied is who? The Asha'ira. Based upon the fact they say that Allah will be seen, however, it will not be in front of us or above us, which doesn't make absolute any sense. They say bidun muqabala, without taking any meeting will take place. Allah will see, you'll see Allah on the day of resurrection, but without it being actually in front of you or above you or what have you. All those matters are contradictive. And like we said, if a Muslim was to hear this type of nonsense, they would be confused. The Prophet ﷺ put this in a manner that's clear for anyone to understand. Rather, he put different types of emphasis on this matter to let one know how they will see Allah on the day of resurrection. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آتنا المصير والفضيلة وبعث المقام محمود الذي وعدته. طيب. You'll find that he mentions Ibn al-Majishun. He's saying that their affair is called hujjah, the so-called proof that they use, but in actuality it's a doubtful matter. A doubtful matter that's astray, and it leads other Muslims and other people astray. That on the day of resurrection, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will appear to those awliya on the day of resurrection who believed in what was correct faith, and correct iman, and correct belief, and they let their righteous actions be the confirmation of their belief, where it was implemented in their actions. He says, رَأَوْا مِنْهُ مَا كَانُوا بِهِ قَبْلَ ذَلِكَ مُؤْمِنِينَ. He said, for those in which they seen from Allah, because of what they used to believe before it had taken place. What was he speaking about? Meaning that they will see Allah's face on the day of resurrection based upon the fact of what they acquired of knowledge in this world, and it becoming actualized in that time, meaning on the day of resurrection. They will see his al-wajh al-kareem, his glorified face subhanahu, and في إنكار صفة الوجه تشترك الأشعرية مع المعتزلة. However, from the Muslims who deviated in that matter, as we mentioned, who rejected that Allah will be seen, is based upon the fact of them denying Allah's face. Because you'll find also, as we'll speak about momentarily if we have time, that not only do they reject that Allah will be seen on the day of resurrection, meaning the Mu'tazila, and what the Ash'ari mentioned, as we mentioned, in regards to their type of contradictory affair that they fell into, which was very confusing. But in addition to that, they also denied that Allah Ta'ala has a face, or that Allah has a face. They deny what they call sifat al-wajh. The Ash'ariyah from the Mu'tazila also shared in that affair, meaning in their denial of Allah Ta'ala's wajh, his face. Rather, you'll find that they distort the meaning. However, you'll find in reality their so-called distortion. Their distortion of the word wajh, which is face, in actuality is rejection and denial of Allah Ta'ala's face. They say it's not permissible to affirm the word face, or the two hands, or the fingers, or the foot of Allah, as they say, based upon the fact of what they mentioned of those words, as we talked about last class. And this is the reason why I say everyone has to attend the class consistently, so we can be on one page, so you can understand what I'm about to say. As far as in the words Asabi' or Qadam, Allah Ta'ala has affirmed this for himself. In so many authentic narrations has been reported that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned these affairs of these attributes of himself subhanahu. You'll find that those who've been affected by Greek philosophy deny these matters. What do they say? They say, we don't believe in none of these attributes of Allah. Why? They said because it comes as a result of it, and their so-called claim that Allah is not body parts or things that are broken up into parts. And they say these affairs are impossible as it pertains to Allah, based upon the fact that they gave precedence to what everyone, to their intellect, and what was adopted by Greek philosophy, and then mixing it up with revelation in order for them to come with these type of atrocities and these deplorable affairs that they believe, which is extremely dangerous. Because like we said, these matters, as a result of it, will bring doubt, and as a result of it, it will lead down to atheism, and the road of atheism. That's the reason why we teach these matters, because they're of the utmost importance, and at the same time, is from the most greatest of affairs that the believer needs to protect before he dies. Because if he dies in a state where his iman is wavering or doubtful, he has died in an extremely dangerous state. Is it clear, everyone? So that's what they said. And we talked about last class the word ajza', the word parts, or being some of something, some of something. These matters were all brought and adopted by the philosophers. We said that the philosophers are the one who introduced these words. As you'll find that the Sahaba, none of them believe these matters, that if they say that Allah has a hand, or Allah Ta'ala has these attributes, that it necessitates that he's what? Body parts, or parts broken up, or some of some parts. Those matters were adopted by Greek philosophy in order to what, as we mentioned, cause doubt within the heart of the Muslim in regards to their faith and in regards to their belief. You'll find, like you mentioned and said, it made them fall into this misguidance, into this confusion, based upon these type of these type of belief that the mind takes precedence, as we just mentioned. As the believers, as us, what comes to our minds, or the people of truth, or what is correct, that these attributes, these matters, they ascribe for Allah, and they firmly believe them. Why? Because Allah affirmed it for Himself. Who's more knowledgeable than the Creator Himself to know of Him, of anyone else being more knowledgeable than Him in regards to Himself? Which doesn't make any sense in regards to those who say, no. We reject this. Allah, you're lying about yourself. Because our rationality takes precedence over what you say. Does that make any sense? No. Our minds take precedence of what we think befits you, than your own self befits you. Does that make any sense? Does it make any sense to anyone? No. Our minds dictate that what's befitting is what our minds say, not what you say. Is it clear, everyone? Is that correct? Is it correct?
No, not yet.
But we'll stop here, inshallah, in this one last statement. But I'm going to end it off by this from their own so-called scholars who said this. ظنوا أنما يثبت لله من هذه الصفات كالذي يثبت لنا. He said the problem is that they believe that what is established for Allah from these characteristics has been established, same with us, our bodies, how it looks. So what did they do? Based upon that, just like their so-called scholar, his name was the Imam of Juwayni, from their scholars, and the father, if we could talk about Imam al-Haramayn, even though he wasn't the Imam of the Haramayn, but that's what they call him. Imam al-Haramayn, the two sanctuaries. But he did return back to the truth, the father. So it was a father whose name was Juwayni, and there was a father and there was a son. We'll talk about and reiterate that next class. But anyway, after he made Tawbah and he announced, he said that the so-called scholars of the deviant sect called the Asha'ira did not understand from the characteristics of the Book of Allah and the Sunnah, the Message of Allah, in regards to the affirmation of those characteristics, except what befits the creation. He summed it up right there. So what did they do? In their minds, they denied the characteristic based upon the fact that they think what they're fleeing away from, they're what? Falling into it. So in their minds, they think face of Allah. The only thing that can come to my mind is what? The created face. That's it. That's all I can get around. So I don't affirm it. If Allah's face is like the face of the creation, I don't affirm it. When I said face is like the face of the creation, what did I just do? Jinn. That's it. That's why the Imam Juwayni said the statement here. He said they did not understand from the text of the Book of Allah, the Sunnah, the Message of Allah, except what befits what? The creation. Khalas, done. Demolish everything. Is it clear, everyone? Sorry, we'll stop here, inshallah. That's enough for today. Any questions about the lesson?
I'm sorry. So, it said, those that deny the face of Allah, that they won't be able to see the face of Allah in the Qiyamah, like the rest of the believers will.
That's what Ibn al-Qayyim mentions in Hadith Arwah ila Bilad al-Afrah. He mentions that. He said that the deviant sect called the Mu'tazila, from the deviant sects of the Muslims called the Mu'tazila, he said we have fear that they will be deprived of seeing Allah due to the fact that they denied it in this world. So they'll be deprived of seeing Allah on the day of resurrection because of their denial here, or in this world, basically. So how do you think you'll attain the ni'mah, rather the greatest of all blessings and the greatest of all bliss in the hereafter, which is to look at Allah, to see your Creator, to see the one who created you is the greatest of all bliss. And despite of that, you deny that because of some rationality and some philosophical affairs that were adopted by Greek pagans and so-called scholars of philosophy, like Socrates and Plato and the likes of those. So you want to give precedence to their guidance over the guidance of Allah. Allah deprives you of that now. Okay, you don't believe it? You deprive of it now. based upon the fact that you want to glorify your mind over what Allah says, this will be your repayment. That's why Ibn al-Qayyim said that those who adopt this type of way, they'll be deprived of it on the day of resurrection. And Allah knows best.
As far as when I made the last statement, what was the name again, Shaykh?
Al-Juwayni. I'll give it to you next class. It's full now. Because we went over it months ago, but I'll give it to you next class. Al-Juwayni, the Imam al-Haramayn, even though he didn't even pray in the Haramayn, but that's what they call him. That's what their followers call him. Anything else? Fine. So that's in regards to the ru'ya, but like we mentioned, it said, keep in mind the affairs that they utilize. We said the words the words direction, place, parts, words such as movement, as it pertains to Allah, in their origin should not be used at all. Why? The most important thing is to stick what Allah said in the Book of Allah and the Sunnah. That's it. What happened was the Salaf were forced to combat these type of errors, and they were forced to use these type of words based upon the fact that when the deviant sects started using them to cause doubt in the Muslims, they had to now mention it in a manner to clarify the truth out of it and remove the falsehood out of it. Because these words carry what? Truth and falsehood at the same time. So denial of the word completely is denial of the truth also. So that's the reason why they had to come clarify what was the truth from it, and removing the falsehood from it, even though in its origin the word should not be used. That's clear what I'm saying? Jay, we'll stop there. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى اله وصحبه. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك اشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك واتوب اليك.